What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Cervantes podcast. Joining me today to discuss animation and graphic design, how he maintains a work-life balance, and his advice for aspiring video editors and animators is video editor at Marvel Entertainment and freelance motion graphics artist Nick Proto. Nick, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Were you always interested in filmmaking and animation?
It's going to sound a bit cliche, maybe a little bit like storybook, but yeah, I since like a really young kid, like I don't even remember the age, maybe 6, I had an interest in filmmaking. And then later, more so animation and graphic design, but still filmmaking today. I always wanted to be like the next like Spielberg or whatever it might be. And while it's not exactly been like that, and my passions have changed a little bit, I would still say that fire is there.
Okay.
I enjoy it a lot. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And were there shows growing up that like animated shows that you said like, oh, like I want to create that or I want to create something like that?
It was definitely a lot of the Pixar films. I think for me, Toy Story was sort of like the catalyst,
Yes,
and
same, same.
not only being like the first like feature length animated or 3D animated CG movie. It was also like one that I just constantly watched over and over. My mom would have killed me, how many times I watched it. And really just a lot of the Pixar movies and also just Disney animation as well, like Lion King and all the classics. And
Right.
we all
Incredibles.
grew up with that. Oh, I love The Incredibles, one of my favorites. And it's funny how much it shaped my life today. Being so invested in the story back then, and now being able to understand the technical aspect of it as well. And having met a few people that worked on those films is just so special and like just awesome to have seen like the path go throughout my life with those
Wow, no,
movies.
that's awesome. So there's Walt Disney, like we said, Seth MacFarlane, Sylvia Harris, and the list goes on. Are there any animators and or graphic design artists that you admire?
Yeah, and there are certainly a lot of animators, like I mentioned, for like Pixar and Disney. I've really focused a lot on the 3D, like CG animation
Okay.
path. And so a lot with like the foundation of Pixar, going back to like Ed Catmull and all the work he did to help found Pixar with Steve Jobs back in the day, and the
Wow, I didn't
technical
even know
aspect
that.
of it. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it was yeah, he wasn't with Apple at that point. It was like a joint venture into Pixar. And he helped get it going. And eventually, it was sold to Disney later on, but it really was a Steve Jobs initiative going from the beginning. And really just all the technical prowess and advancements they made in that field. I just admire so many of the filmmakers involved there. Also with Walt Disney Animation and just everything. It's hard to name a select few that really inspire me from the graphic design and animator standpoint. But there certainly are a lot of filmmakers that come to mind that, while they're not necessarily doing like animation or haven't really done too much of it, certainly inspired me with filmmaking and animation. From uh, Jon Favreau with everything he's doing with
Yes.
Star Wars and Mandalorian, and some of my
Yes.
favorite movies like Chef. And
Okay.
then there's like, of course, yeah, Chris Nolan, Denis Villeneuve, all these amazing filmmakers, um, uh, some of which Brad Bird, going back to The Incredibles and everything, and
Right, right.
just like I really admire uh, figures that come from that field of like cinema and are able to translate that into the animated form, and graphic design and any form of that, which is just so cool and like a huge inspiration for me.
No, that's awesome. I think I could definitely see you like maybe one day. Like, do you ever think about making a kind of like a Into the Spider-Verse animated film? Did you ever think
Oh,
about something
I
making that?
love Into the Spider-Verse. So cool,
Yes,
so good.
yes.
One
I
of my
can't wait for the live
favorites.
action.
Oh, they got to bring Miles into the MCU.
Yes, yes. I'm here for it.
It I would love to do something like that. I actually really admire that film too because of the way that it was made, and they combined the CG animation with the comic book 2D style. You can almost see that in the way that it's animated. You kind of have the stop motion effect in a sense.
Right.
And the way, if you watch like the frames of each character, and in some places it's more subtle than not. Just so cool and so well done how they made that.
No, yeah, and even with your work, like I was looking at your website, and I remember you when I was learning about internships at school, because Nick is an alum from Hofstra. I currently go to Hofstra, and it was an internship fair, and you put together a piece where it was like how to teach people about how to get an internship, and it was like a 3D type of animation, and
Yeah,
you kind of see that 3D thing that you were talking about there. So I could definitely see you moving into like a film for sure.
I love that was one of my favorite projects. I loved working on that one. That was for Professor Morrow in the program, and I did that a few months after graduation, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
So it was like a
Okay.
post grad project, but still, I was still connected to my Hofstra roots, having just graduated then, and that was just so fun to make. I had a great time. I illustrated all the little characters and things, and all of the music and sound effects. Sourced that and brought it in and animated it. It was not easy, but I poured that time and effort into it because I love doing it, and I wanted to help out the school and help out others who were once in my place finding internships and all that.
No, it was so well done. I'm definitely gonna put a graphic when people go and watch this, but it was very well done.
Thank you.
Does it take, do you find yourself taking a while to work on those 3D or any project that you work on that's animated? Do you find yourself taking a long time to work on it?
It can take a while, especially when it comes to animation. But I find that like when it's a personal project that I care a lot about, it's not a lot of work. It doesn't feel like work.
Okay.
I'm pouring the time into it because I care about it. So like that project in particular, it did take a while. It was a couple months, but I learned a lot doing it, and I think that by taking the time to get it right, by making it look a certain way. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I think I'm proud of what came of it. It's because you put the time and energy into it, and the detail. The detail really matters. I don't
Right.
believe anything's perfect, but I think striving for perfectionism is important because it's like your personal brand and creating something that represents you. It's bigger than just the one thing that you're making.
Right. Always putting your best foot forward, not
Hmm.
trusting the process. And
Yes.
if you love what you do, like you said, it won't feel like work. I totally agree.
Yeah. 100%.
Which project of yours has been your favorite so far?
Hmm. Favorite project. You know, I I consider myself like a hobbyist visual effects artist. I've always had a passion for visual effects, going back from my interest in filmmaking. And I would say that comes from like my inspirations like George Lucas and James Cameron, who are, huge
Yes.
blockbuster icons, legends, but
Right.
also because they transformed the industry with their technical achievements and everything that George Lucas did with Star Wars, uh, and James Cameron did with like Avatar and Titanic and things, and just changed everything. And it was a combination of filmmaking and also visual effects. So over the years, I've had a chance to do some personal projects that have incorporated visual effect design and artistry. And I've also been able to help out a lot of friends from Hofstra and elsewhere with their films and
Nice.
shorts and things. And I'm not, I'm always learning and trying new things, but some of my favorite projects over the years have just been implementing and learning visual effects and helping others. I remember a few projects a couple years ago. It was designing like space vistas and different layered effects and composition. And then a more recent one I did was like magic design for like this supernatural character, and he had like a
Okay.
well of souls and things, and that was a lot of fun. And then my most recent visual effects project I helped a friend with was probably the most advanced because I did a lot of like set extensions and creating green screen king and rotoscoping and creating like different scenes just from nothing or stock images or something. So I do it as a hobbyist. I'm not professional, but I
Okay.
really always have enjoyed those projects.
No, that's awesome, because I think I like to follow like a complex, and sometimes they'll show like how a scene was filmed and it's actually all green screen, like nothing behind the actor is sometimes nothing behind the actor is actually real. So it's so cool to see like how much green screen is incorporated, and all the things you mentioned are incorporated in present day, because you don't have to be in a certain location to get like a shot. So yeah, it's so
Exactly.
interesting. It's so
Yeah,
interesting.
and it all, it comes from filmmaking and motion graphics roots. Like, I would say that I have a lot of interests and they all kind of fall under the post-production sphere. So when
Okay,
it
like
comes to
editing.
yeah, editing, visual effects, motion graphics, animation, I consider it all to be under one umbrella. And
Yeah.
I enjoy doing a lot of it. It could be a pitfall of mine sometimes when I'm working on something. I'm like, yeah, I probably could ask someone else or have someone else do this that knows it a lot better than me. But then I'm like, no, I want to learn it and do it myself, even if I have no idea how to do it. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't.
Because
Um,
it's fun, but
but
you also
yeah,
wanna learn. Yeah.
I want to know what makes something work when it comes to like the process in like a film or a video I'm doing or animation. Like, um, I just want to know how it's done, even if I don't am not able to fully do it for my project. Just having the fundamentals is really helpful, and that's
Yeah.
actually helped me with Marvel too. Like, I don't know everything about the production process of like comic books and some of the other things that they do in Marvel Studios, but I want to learn it so I can help in the future if it ever comes up.
Yeah, and maybe then you can do it yourself, or
Mhm.
like when that person retires, or I don't want to get morbid, but when they die, like then you can
Yeah.
like take it on and do your own project. So that's awesome. And I think it's always nice to see the process. Like I love shadowing. I love being able to like watch videos on how a tutorial on how something's done. Because the finished project is always nice, but I think the journey, it sounds corny, but the journey is always fun to watch for
I,
sure.
I completely agree. Sometimes I actually don't want to finish a project because I'm learning a lot in it and I want to keep adding more to it because I'm learning new things,
And then
which that can
you're
be
always
dangerous.
working on it, and it's like never
Yeah.
done. Yeah.
Yeah. That could be a problem many times, but sometimes it's okay if I'm just like testing or doing something fun.
Which project has been the most challenging for you to create?
So it actually goes back to animation. Over the years, I have been trying to create a short animated film, um,
Okay.
3D animated film, and since my Hofstra days, I've been trying to do it. And it's not that I lack the resources necessarily or the skills. I think it would be the time. It is just really time intensive, and I think that something I've been kicking myself for the past couple of years is I can be a perfectionist to a fault when it comes to certain projects. And with this one, because it's like a passion project, it's definitely been difficult to get that one off the ground just because, you know, when it comes to like short films, especially animation, the simpler the better with the idea. And
Mm.
I do have some ideas in mind for it, and then they get too big, and then it becomes a longer film, and then I'm like, oh my god, what am I doing? So that's a project that's not yet completed, and I can't really share anything that's been done with it yet. But it's certainly something that's been like my tentpole project. Eventually, that will be like the culmination of all I've learned as of yet
Wow.
into one thing.
Wow. And no, I can totally relate to that. Like I know listening to a lot of interviews from industry professionals like yourself, they often say like it's hard because like I'm assuming the movie the film that you're talking about is catered towards children, and you want to have good graphics and have a good story and plot and good design, but also cater towards young people and have them understand, and it's palatable for them. So I know
Mhm.
that can be tricky. Like it can't be 3 hours, even though you want all these cool effects and all these stuff going on. So yeah, I can I know that to be true for sure, and I've heard that a lot.
Yeah,
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 that can be
it is
difficult.
true. Bigger films that everyone knows that are animated films. It's easy to look at them and be like, oh yeah, like I love that, but like there is a science to why they appeal to so many ages and things, and it's difficult to do that. You don't want to dumb something down where unless you're making like strictly like a very young children's animation. But for me, it's about making a story that is timeless and anyone can appreciate.
Okay.
um, yeah, and it's like finding a story that is like, okay, yeah, I mean, like a kid could watch it and get it, but also like an adult can get it and also love it too. And I think that's the
Okay.
magic of like animated films that all of us nowadays love and rewatch, is because it appeals to that timeless generation and
Right.
a sense of storytelling.
Right, like a lot of Disney movies are, a lot of Pixar movies, because a lot of kids are watching, but sometimes I'll watch it with a younger family member. I'm like, oh, like I
Yeah.
got that message, and maybe my
Yeah.
6-year-old cousin didn't. So I like when a film can appeal to both. Since 2017, you have been a member of the Marvel Digital Media team, which has piloted dozens of series into production that have boosted Marvel's distinguished brand and provided award-winning entertainment for millions of fans worldwide. How did you get started at Marvel, and how has your experience been?
Yeah, so I started at Marvel back in 2017, my senior spring of my senior year, um, with an internship as a video production intern, and
Wow.
that was back in January of 17. And so that semester, I spent time with the video team doing live action stuff. They shot in their studio at the Marvel offices, and I did some graphic design and animation and helping out with like templates and kind of just a
Wow.
wide range of video production and post things to learn. And I did some really cool stuff. And one of the projects I helped on was was an animated video comic series. So it was like taking
Nice.
comic artwork and then bringing that into a short 2 to 3 minute animation. Um,
Wow. Okay. Wow.
and so that was my long-term project during my internship. And so then, of course, the internship ended. It was great. I graduated that May, and I actually reached out because I was applying for jobs like everyone else.
Yes.
I reached out to Marvel to see if, like, hey, I helped out with this project back during my internship. Is there anything you need? Can I help with anything as like a freelancer or whatever? And so that like summer, I was helping them as a freelance graphic design artist on that series, which was really cool. But of course, it was only freelance and like a small gig thing. So I was still looking for other jobs.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
and I did find there was another job that I almost accepted, but it wasn't what I was really passionate about. I didn't really love that place. It was a job and I was happy to get an offer. But what I did was I asked Marvel, I'm like, hey, I have this other offer. I've been working with you guys too. I would love to do things at Marvel, come back, maybe full time or whatever, full time freelance or full time employee staff. And it just worked out at the time that they did need someone to help out on that series. So
Wow.
I did come aboard at Marvel as a staffed full time video animator, motion graphics artist back in 17. And yeah, since then, my role has changed a bit more to video editing now than animation, but I still dip my toes into that. There's actually a dedicated motion graphics team at Marvel now. When I started, it was just a few people in the video department, and now it's a much larger team doing some
Wow.
crazy
Wow.
stuff. I've been there almost the longest out of many of my coworkers, and I've seen people come and go, but the team has really changed. And what we're doing nowadays, it's amazing to see where it's gotten. And now with studios making so many big movies, post up to Endgame and post Endgame, and all the
Yes.
Disney Plus shows now, it's incredible. So
That's
I've been very
awesome.
grateful and happy to be with the team since then.
That's awesome. And video editor in the motion graphics and graphic design, or mostly just video editor, would you
So
say?
right now it's mainly like my principal role is video editing. But I would say that it does shift into different parts. So I do assist with motion graphics, animation, and even occasionally, live streaming, broadcast stuff. And
Wow.
everyone wears a lot of hats on the team. It's a smaller team, my video editor side. So like we will help with other stuff. So like, you know, and learning things too. So I'm looking into more like advanced audio production stuff now and
Okay.
animation. And I'd say that my role kind of bridges a few things. So I've been lucky to have that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Is there a department, and maybe is there a movie or TV show that you would like to work on at Marvel or Disney company overall?
I mean, uh, it's funny when I tell people I work at Marvel, they're like, "Oh, so you worked on the latest like movie that came out?" I'm like, "I
No Way
wish
Home. Yeah.
that would be amazing." They don't tell me anything, and now I have had some opportunity to see stuff ahead of time. I mean, that's just the job, but like I haven't had a chance. That's Marvel Entertainment is the comic powerhouse behind Marvel, where it all started, and it's very important. But then Marvel Studios is a separate entity within Disney.
Okay.
And so while we work with them, there's collaboration. It is separate out in LA.
Okay.
There might be always a chance in the future that there's opportunity at Marvel Studios or Disney Plus. And I think nowadays they're all becoming so much more aligned under one umbrella again, that I think that my team will definitely have more of an influence in helping out those things. I would love to work on the next Marvel Disney Plus show or movie. That would be amazing. After watching No Way Home, it's a dream.
No, that movie was incredible. So many plot twists, and
Oh,
it's just it's cool to see how far cinematography has grown from like the 90s or maybe even early 2000s to now.
mhm.
It's so cool. It's so cool.
Yeah, where Marvel was, and it had troubles, at one point as a company, and then of course came along Disney, and it's transformed so much, and it's spectacular to see where it is now, and like it's worldwide recognition. Whereas comic book readers in the past were shamed for being like nerds, and now look at
Right.
it. It's almost like weird if you don't like them, like the movies and characters. I mean, who
Or if you're
doesn't
not running to go
like
see
it?
the next Marvel movie. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like it's
it's
become
everywhere.
pop culture.
It is
Yeah.
transcendent, and it is part of cinema. It is part of the culture, and everyone's in on it. So I'm
I didn't
proud to be part of that.
Yes, I didn't ask you. What is your do you have a favorite comic book superhero or favorite comic book?
In terms of like a character, I've always loved Iron Man. Like that's kind of
Okay.
like the cliche answer I'll give, just because like that's the film back when it started at all. But like in terms of like a character, I don't know. I just like love Loki. I don't know what it is
Okay.
about. I mean, from the comic book adaptation standpoint, he's always been a fun character, and also then Tom Hiddleston's portraying him in the films, it's just been amazing. And then
Okay.
of
I
course I
gotta watch the
love,
Loki
yeah.
series.
Oh, so good, so good.
I gotta watch
One
that.
of my favorites. One of my edits that I love doing at Marvel was like a visual effects breakdown of how they did things in the show, in the Loki
Oh,
series.
nice. Okay.
So that is something like the progressions of all the stuff, and that was really fun being a part of that and doing
Yeah.
things with that, which
I
is a
gotta get
collaboration
more.
with studios. Yeah.
Okay, okay. That's is that on your website? Did you post that?
Yeah, I believe it's on like my Marvel page. I try to put everything that I've done on one page on the site. But it's like under like we've done several like visual effects, how they did it, behind the scenes breakdowns of the Disney Plus shows on Marvel's YouTube
Nice.
page, and that's one of my
Okay.
favorites that I worked on.
I gotta check that out. I gotta check that out. And I gotta get more into the Thor movies. I feel like I paid more attention to like Iron Man, Captain
Yeah.
America, the
Yep.
Thor. I saw the first one. I gotta get like Ragnarok and all those.
Oh, Ragnarok
Um,
is my favorite. One of my favorite Marvel films. So funny.
okay,
So well done. Definitely recommend that.
gotta check that out. Gotta check that out. Beyond Marvel, you have designed motion graphics for Viacom Velocity's brand integrations, created numerous production company logos, and developed visual effects for independent feature films. For those who don't know, Velocity is Viacom CBS's branded content studio. Do you still create content for Viacom Velocity?
Occasionally, I used to more heavily work with them right around like graduation, when I had a good friend who got me into that
Oh,
from
nice.
Hofstra as well. I
Okay,
did some work with
nice.
them over the years, yeah, and it's always been like a very great opportunity to work with that team and do some really cool stuff. It's actually stylistically quite different from Marvel, to do the kind of graphics for different kind of brand integrations and uh, some really cool things that I've seen in making graphics with that. The team's kind of changed a bit since the whole merger with CBS and stuff. But I think a lot of the people I work with from there, I've done some other cool stuff with recently.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Do you have a most memorable experience from that company?
It's hard to say. It's been a lot of many projects over the
Okay.
last couple of years. I don't know. I've just seen like a lot of cool things where I will say when it comes to the Viacom freelance work, I've been able to really stretch my creative muscles and do a lot of things, making stuff from scratch sometimes, or taking elements in for different brands. I can't even begin to name all of them that I've worked on, but I would say it's just like MTV I mean, all of those really fun brands that are different from Marvel, but very cool in their own way. And yeah, I'm happy to have done a lot of work with that team.
That's awesome. That's all. And it's probably nice to branch out and not be stuck in one thing. Because I think in our industry, sometimes people may feel pigeonholed, like, oh, I got to stay
Mhm.
here because I'm excelling here. But no, it's okay to branch out and go to different companies. Are there companies that you would love to work with one day, or like you're thinking about working with one day, if you can say?
Yeah, no, of course. I always, look out and see what other companies are doing. You see a film by a certain company and it's just like awesome. Like I recently been on like an A24 kick, all like their
Nice.
films and things, because I'm kind of like a horror fan as well. So like I rewatched like Hereditary and Midsummer, and just like to get ideas for projects. And it's kind of like a smaller company, I guess. I know it's still pretty well known, but like an indie development kind of style, where it's not like a blockbuster coming from like Marvel or Disney. But also like within the Disney playground, I've really just enjoyed working there. And there are so many different properties like Disney Plus, and of course Marvel
ESPN,
Studios
I
and
think Hulu.
ESPN. Oh, yep,
Yeah.
Hulu. I mean, so it's just getting larger now. It's 20th century. It's big, and so there's a
Yeah.
lot to play around with in that company. And of course, I have a lot of friends that work at Comcast. My fiance works at NBC, MSNBC. So,
Nice.
like there's so many different places creating content and so many cool outlets for storytelling. There's both huge companies, the mega companies, and the smaller ones too. I've always wanted to work for Pixar, of course. That hasn't
Nice.
aligned yet, but maybe in
Okay.
the future.
One day,
Um,
one day.
yeah, DreamWorks. The past before it was Shudder to Change. Blue Sky Studios was one that I always wanted to be at. That was a really cool animation house. I have interned at small visual effect houses for post things, and
Wow.
and and I've always had an idea of like which teams I'd want to be a part of and which I wouldn't want to. And I'm very proud to be part of Marvel and Disney, and who knows where that'll go in the future.
Yeah,
um,
the sky is limitless, and I think you're very
yes,
young, so you have definitely a lot more to go, and definitely more great content to produce. So I'm
I
excited to
hope
see what's
so.
next.
I
For
hope
sure.
it's. I hope it'll be good. We'll see what happens.
Back in
Yeah.
2019, during an Obama Foundation event, President Barack Obama was asked how he maintains a work-life balance. He replied, "I don't think there's a perfect formula. On my deathbed, I am confident I will not remember any bill I passed. I will not remember any speech I gave. I won't be thinking about the inauguration. I will be thinking about holding hands with my daughters and taking them to a park or seeing them laugh. That is going to be the thing that lasts. There will be phases in your life where you have to prioritize different things." I wanted to ask you, do you agree, and how do you maintain a work-life balance?
Oh, I absolutely agree with that. And it rings so true. I mean, it's actually funny the timing of our interview worked out well with this recent like thought I've had about work-life balance. Because over the years, I think I've I struggled a little bit with that balance, and also like with anxiety and mental health, and like trying to find what like my passions are, and are they in my job or are they not in my job. And I've just like come to the conclusion, like I am very happy with my work at Marvel and everything I do with as a freelancer as well. But I think my true passions and love for creative arts lie as a hobby outside of work. And so I've been
Okay.
doing a lot of brainstorming recently on creative projects like the animated film, and some short films I've actually been working on in the background. And I've struggled with being like, okay, should I pour more time into my job and like go even further? I want to be ambitious. I want to have, an executive role one day, maybe in the company. And not that I don't want that, but I realize like, I think my creative passions and love for what I do, with filmmaking and animation really come out when I'm working on my hobbies. So I've set up a really strict boundary between work and like personal life and hobbies and things, because I think that beforehand, where I was just focusing all on work and I cut out filmmaking, I'm like, I don't think filmmaking is for me. I don't think it's going to work out. It takes too long. I'm just going to focus everything on my job. And I wasn't happy. I was getting burnt out. That was a huge problem. And even going back to Hofstra, going back to classes in school, like I realized how important having like a side project is, having an outlet, having a hobby I can look forward to and work on and spend time on outside of work that's separate from work. And I've just recommended to all family and friends, like, just have that. It doesn't have to be a film. Not everyone's a filmmaker, but just having some outlet that you enjoy outside of your job.
It could
It's the
literally
only
be
way you can stay
anything.
sane. Anything. I people crochet, people draw, people paint, there's photography, sports, so many things, different outlets. And I, everyone has to find it. I struggled with a while after graduation from Hofstra of, if I wanted to continue filmmaking as a hobbyist or if I wanted to do it professionally. A lot of my friends went into the film industry professionally as careers. And some of them are doing great and others struggled because they turned the hobbies that they loved into a career. And that wasn't the right move for them. Not the same, it doesn't apply to everyone, but sometimes when you turn your hobbies into a job and when you make it into a living, you start to resent it. And for a little while, I was resenting my, animation and video production and editing because it was my job. And it was my, 9 to 5. But nowadays I can recognize, like, while my role as a video editor, I don't identify as a video editor. I edit videos. I do animate graphics, but I am not just an animator. I am not just a motion graphics designer. I do create things, but I'm trying not to wrap that up in the identity. And I think that helps with the work-life balance and not wrapping yourself up in a job. Wrap
I love
yourself up in
that.
the talent and the passion that you love on the side.
I love that. I love that. You're a son. You are a fiance. You do a lot of you're more than just your job. And I think that
Yeah.
art is about passion. And even though everything is a business and we need money to survive, it's like don't get too lost in that, because then, like you said, you become like a workhorse. It's like, oh, like I'm producing this art and I'm good at it and people are counting on me and this is my livelihood, and you kind of like put a lot of pressure on yourself. But you have to, like what you said, like your mental health is very important, focusing on the things that really matter and not becoming a workaholic. And you are not your title. It's great that you have your title, you worked hard, you earned that, but don't one day you're not going to do that. You might retire, and like, then what are you going to do? Are you going to be happy then? Don't wait till you retire, be happy now. Yeah, so because you
That
never
is
know what's
so
going to happen
true.
at
Yeah.
65, so
No, but it's a crazy world. And I think it's really important to be satisfied at your job and to enjoy it, because if you don't enjoy it, then there's no point in being there. Like, yeah, work can be work, but like, you have to at least enjoy a little bit of it and be satisfied by it. And I'm grateful that I am at Marvel and with freelance stuff. But I've known a lot of people that have just been totally burnt out by their job because they just gave it everything and they neglected their mental health and their hobbies. But then again, I also know people that thrive off that and go full into work because it drives them. And it's a per person situation. Personally, I couldn't do that. I had to have some outlet of creative stuff that is just different from Marvel. Like, I'm working on short horror films on the side and animated tales of, with other things. So it's like, it's just a range of other stuff that's not superheroes and Disney
and
and Viacom and that.
you're not being paid for some of those side
Yeah.
hobbies, I'm sure. Yeah, so
No, yeah, they're just hobbies, they're outlets. They might be submitted for festivals, sure, or something, but I'm not looking for fame and fortune off of them.
right. And because we see that a lot too with certain maybe child stars or certain notable figures, where they get caught up in the fame, or they get caught up in the riches and they lose themselves. And oftentimes, it ends up very in a bad situation. So, to avoid that, it's like, okay, how can I learn from, like, looking at these people that sometimes we idolize, how can I learn from that and not get caught up in the money and the fortune? Because that's not, you won't find happiness in that, and we hear
Right.
that, but I think people don't really, understand that. Like, you won't always find happiness in things that make you a lot of money. Because at some point you won't be popular, or you may retire and you may not have that job. So then what are you going to do with the rest of your life living? Or what do you do when you go home and try not to take the work home? So yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Life changes all the time and you have to just be willing to try new things. And, if you're an artist, just keep creating. I had this whole thing. I think I mentioned it a little bit, but for the last few years since graduation, where I was like not creating anything, and it wasn't, there was no side projects that I was creating art and having an outlet there, because I kind of feared failure. I feared like perfectionism, making sure it was perfect, which is why my animated film has had some trouble getting off the ground.
Okay.
And I've just realized like, no, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just like create content, just get yourself out there, because one day you're going to be 70 years old, hopefully. I mean, and then you're going to be like, wow, I didn't make anything. I wasted all this time trying to make the perfect thing, or waiting until everything was in place, or I had everything to, do this one thing. In this case, you'll create one film or do an animation, and then it's too late. It's better
Yeah.
to make stuff and learn and fail. Failure is so important than to not try at all. It's like, the Yoda quote, don't try, you just got to do it. And
Yeah. No, yeah.
it's so true, because I fell into that trap, and I'm only coming out of it now and seeing the light of, you have to make stuff. You can't let life keep going. And that's what I'm trying to do now.
Did COVID-19, this pandemic, and all this, like, I feel like mental health has been a very popular conversation. Did all of that make you really sit down and think about that, about what you said?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely struggled with the pandemic in terms of my mental health, and I thankfully took the action. It did take some time, but I was like, you know what, this is not helping what I'm doing, of just like sitting at home and just doing work, and then like languishing after work, and then going to bed and restarting.
Yeah.
It wasn't working for me. So I sought out the resources, mental health resources. And I'm so glad I did, because if I hadn't, I don't think that I would be in the position now to be doing well at work and my personal life, to be doing art. And I think only now, because I focused on my mental health and just paused everything, be like, okay, let's address this, to where I got to where I am now, to be like, okay, I think I can get up and running and make stuff again.
Right, right. Because I think when I think Oprah said it, like, on, I was watching TikTok the other day, and she's like, once you clear that chaos in your mind, in your personal life, then you can clear the chaos that you may be putting out into the world. Like, fix what's in your heart, fix what's in your mind, fix what's at home, and then you can like maybe excel at work. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's so
Yeah.
true.
And it's important for everyone to just take a look at their mental health, and especially during this terrible pandemic, and seeing what they can do to improve themselves. I tried to like address a lot of the problems I had with my work-life balance, and why I was fearing failure, and I still do. I haven't like successfully accomplished all those, getting rid of all the negative, toxic things that have been plaguing my mind. But
Right.
just taking step by step and going through it, and maybe seeking help through a therapist or a counselor or a friend, and just trying to figure out what's going on. And maybe there's a root of a problem you haven't seen, and it takes a third party perspective to see that.
Yeah.
And that's what it was for me.
My next question, ultimately, what is your advice for aspiring video editors and animators, or anyone looking to get into the entertainment industry?
My biggest piece of advice, it goes back to what I just said, is just keep creating. Just create. It does
Okay.
not have to be perfect. It can be a 5-second animation. It can be post-it notes that you just animated and you're doing like a flip book. It can be a drawing. My biggest regret, again, is that I did not create enough during my years at Hofstra and after graduation. And while I'm doing stuff now, or at least I'm trying to, I had a long period where I just didn't. And that was because of the fear of failure. And it's okay to you just have to make stuff, go out with a couple of friends. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. If you're an artist or a filmmaker or a video editor, animator, just try and do something. And you could share it with the world, or it can just be for yourself. Once I realized like I was making stuff, not for others, but for myself, that like opened a lot of doors for me creatively. Because I wasn't afraid of producing something that was going to be scrutinized, because it's something I made. It's an expression of myself. It might sound cliche, but like that's what art is. And I'm
Yeah.
happy I realized that, because I wasn't making anything. I hadn't picked up my camera in years. And I only finally did, and I just like now I kind of see the world differently again. I'm like, oh, that's what I was missing over the years. I literally forgot how to like think and create creative stuff again, and it feels really good to be doing it. So that is my biggest piece of advice: is just don't fear failure, let it come, learn from it, and just create. Because if you don't, you won't have anything, and you'll regret not making anything in your life.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, don't try not to care what other people think. I always say it, almost every episode. I always say it. It always comes back because it's so true. Trying not to, put too much value into what other people say about you yourself or your art or your business or your podcast or whatever whatever you're producing or making. That's so true. And would you say, like, you got like a really good internship at Marvel? Are there any, like, maybe resume or cover letter skills or maybe interviewing skills that you could recommend for people who are trying to apply for internships and try to get that job in college or out of college?
Well, I will say I am no resume or cover letter expert. I hate writing cover letters. I don't think
Same,
anyone really likes
honestly,
it.
if I'm being real.
Yeah, it's not my favorite thing. And even resumes, I just think are bland and out of date. But we all need them nowadays. And my other piece of advice with that is I think having a portfolio presence, some website presence is really helpful for creative professionals or people going into the industry or something like that. You can just showcase your work. It does not have to be an expensive website or anything. You can make a free one off WordPress or Squarespace or Wix,
Yep,
what have
yeah.
you. I mean, there's so many options. Actually, a lot of people nowadays just use Instagram as their portfolio site for photography and filmmaking. My brother is a barber, and he has
Okay,
thousands of followers off Instagram, and he showcases all his barber work on there, and he's like doing really well, and that's his portfolio.
that's awesome. Yeah.
Um, and it's so important to have, because when you're applying for a job and they require a reel, actually a lot of places don't require a reel as much anymore as just like a web presence. So you send them like your website, and they're like, just have a front page of all the recent work you've done that you're proud of, that showcases your skills. Not to say that a reel isn't important, but I think nowadays the attention span of people is so quick. You just have to
Yeah.
like get stuff out there. And I think a website, just like a front page that you can see on your phone or computer, is just really valuable to have. And also, I'll say, in school, it's really important to participate in like extracurricular activities. I was really involved with the Heat Network at Hofstra. That's like the student television network. Also the
Yes.
Hofstra Filmmakers Club. Being on the e-boards of both of those and being really involved, not because I had to, but because I really loved those organizations. I loved working with friends out of the classroom. Um, if you just focus on your classes at Hofstra, if you're like a production major and you're just doing the production classes and nothing else, you're just going to your dorm after, not talking about COVID, of course, and all the things that's changed.
Right.
But if you're doing like the bare minimum, you're not going to be set apart from your friends and peers that are getting involved, and not necessarily, you don't have to make amazing stuff, but you're just making things, and you're learning, and you're making connections and building a network. And because that network is the most valuable thing you'll have out of college. It's not your GPA. It's not even really your degree. It's the network you made and all the friends you have and professors and connections, because you did all these extracurriculars and you made a name for yourself, and you developed your personal brand to be someone who is reliable, shows up, cares, and learns, and is willing to learn. And that is the most important thing. Your willingness to learn and be a team player. That is the most important thing you can do.
I
If
could
you can
not put
show
it
an
better.
employer that, I mean, it's funny. You can look at all the numbers and stats of how to make the perfect resume and cover letter. But if you're just going to be a lone wolf at a job and not work with a team well, and not care about what others think or collaborate with them well, and are not willing to learn and think you know it all, you are not going to succeed in any job, in any industry.
Yes, you gotta work hard. That's good too, but also be likable. Like, be collaborative.
Yeah.
Be someone that people like can rely on, like you said. But also, can you be likable? Are you easy to work with? Because I think if you're someone who's so good at their job, but they're like an a-hole, It's like, I don't think you're gonna get very far in the
Yeah,
industry.
they
You
won't.
might not have a lot of
They won't.
friends, so, and you're saying that as someone, as an industry professional, so I know it must be true because we always hear that from our parents and teachers. But I totally agree. I think I kind of switched my major late to TV production. But I wish I got involved in the Heat Network sooner. But even though I've only worked on a couple, it's been so fun. Like Thursday Night Live, Sports Beat, because you learn a lot. I've learned a lot in the classroom, but I definitely say working at TNL and Sports Beat and the Heat Network
Mhm.
productions, I've learned way more, way more. So it's
Oh
it's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
It's awesome.
And for a lot of film majors, getting involved in like the senior film projects, signing up to crew those, even as a freshman, I know I tried to get on a few as a freshman, and you're just making friends. It doesn't have to be this whole like, oh, I don't know if they're going to let me on the crew. Of course, they're going to help. They want help. They want people to come on and be a PA or whatever, and not to boss you around, but just to have help, and you learn so much from that. I almost think it's like necessary to have that. And you mentioned that you changed your major late and you didn't get involved with much of heat, but look at this podcast you have. I mean,
Thank you.
for any employer, having your own podcast presence, and you certainly have one, a large one, is significant. It shows that you're doing stuff outside of the classroom, that you're doing something creative. It's huge. It sets you apart. It'll make a big difference down the road.
Thank you.
And
I appreciate that.
it could be anything. Yeah.
Now for some TCP rapid fire questions. Switching gears. So the first question: what makes you laugh the most?
Oh, what makes me laugh the most? I think everyone's talking nowadays about like Gen Z being like addicted to TikTok and things, but honestly, like the reason I haven't like downloaded TikTok on my own phone, it's on my fiance's, is just because I would be addicted to all the crazy stuff on there. I have laughed so much from what people have been making since like the pandemic started, and I got started watching those things. It's just like random stuff. I'm not saying it's all good, but like just so funny. Some people,
It's so
it
accurate
reminds me a lot of,
sometimes.
yeah, it makes me miss Vine in the old days. I'm going to sound like an old person, even though I'm just 26, but Vine was just like what TikTok is now. And it's just like these
Yes,
short little things, and I miss it. I don't know. I just think like that kind of stuff and physical comedy and skits is fun. It's like why I love shows like Always Sunny, because it's just like the timing is hilarious. Um, and that stuff I just can't get enough of.
I love that. No, same. Three things you're grateful for.
That's a good one. Three things. I would definitely say my fiance, Katie, who's also my best friend.
I
We're gonna
love
get
that.
married next May. We've been in a relationship for 7+ years since Hofstra. We met in
Wow.
freshman year in Groningen in
Wow.
the Netherlands. She's a TV, actually, yeah, she was TV production BS major, and I was film and TV. So we obviously overlapped a lot of classes
Wow.
together, and we came through that. And my friend group, and we're all in the same friend group too. So definitely grateful for her. What else? Definitely grateful that I have the ability to create stuff as a hobby on the side. I have the time. I'm lucky that I'm not working 80 hours a week like I know some people have to, which
Right.
is unfortunate. And I know the hustle is there, but I'm glad I have some balance. I can work on stuff, creative stuff on the side. Um, let's see. And I guess, yeah, I guess opportunities like this, what we're doing right now, just like the chance, I don't know, like inspire others, hopefully,
Yes,
help
yes, I
others,
think so. I'm
when,
inspired, so I hope people listening are too.
oh, thank you. I'm glad someone is. No,
Where do you see? Oh, what would you tell your younger self?
I'd slap my younger self. No, my younger self, I'd probably tell him a lot of what I was telling you about, creating stuff, and don't be afraid to create stuff. Don't fear imperfections. I struggle a lot with OCD,
Okay.
as a mental, with mental health and stuff, and I've overcome a lot of that by realizing things don't have to be flawless. That I can make stuff, and it doesn't have to be perfect. So definitely would tell my younger self, just make stuff, just make crap. I don't care what it is. And definitely, I would tell him just like focus, don't ignore your mental health. It's so important to address it, and talk to people, talk to friends and family. Don't bottle it all in. It's not brave. It's
Yes,
stupid.
yes. To
It's
all
okay
the
to have
young men
anxiety.
listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, young men and women, just it's okay to have anxiety. It's not a weakness. That's one thing I've realized. It's not a weakness to have uh, doubts and anxiety or whatever. So definitely address that.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Well, that's like the employee interview question. I always hated that one.
It's difficult,
It's
yeah.
tough. If you would ask me like that 5 years ago to my 5 year, what I would say then, it'd be a completely different answer. Obviously, I would have said something ridiculous about being like a famous director. Look, that's changed. But
Okay.
I would think 5 years from now, I will be happy if I will obviously be married by that point. My fiance, I will hopefully have a nice house. I live in Astoria, Queens now in an apartment. It's great, but
Oh,
I think
nice.
the city
Okay.
life is probably not going to be for me forever. I might still be at Marvel. Who knows? Maybe somewhere else at Disney, somewhere else entirely. I don't know. I've always had interest of having my own company and doing things with production and or helping people with film and TV and animation. So maybe something like that. Um, but I think most of all, if I'm just as long as I'm creating stuff, creating content, having something put out there in the world that I've made that I'm proud of, whether it's for a lot of people or just for myself, in the next 5 years, I will be happy.
And the last TCP rapid fire question, what would you name this current chapter of your life?
That's a good one. Trying to think. Thank God I'm not an author. I would be able to brainstorm these. I guess, I've always had this word in my head of like, and I use it, I used to use it in a realistic, serious tone back during Hofstra, but now I kind of look at it as like an ironic thing, but in a good way. And I would call it maybe the catalyst, because
Ooh, okay.
when I was in Hofstra, I was trying to get that animated film off the ground. I actually was using it for a class, production class.
Okay.
And of course, it's been a few years since that class, so obviously it's been past that. But I used that. I was saying, okay, if I get this film off the ground, this animation, it'll be the catalyst for all the big things in my life. I'll be famous and have accolades and get into
Right.
Pixar and Disney and all these things. And it obviously didn't manifest as that. And so I kind of kicked myself for the next few years, being like, oh yeah, you just called it that because you were like, you have an ego and that's not the right mindset. And you shouldn't even create stuff. You can't make anything. But now, this year specifically, where I'm starting to gear my mind back into like creating film and stuff, I'm actually saying it again. Like, I think this mindset I have now, this new work-life balance, this new creative pursuit, that is kind of the catalyst. And I don't know what it's going to lead to. Honestly, it could just be creating indie stuff myself, and I'm happy with that. But it turns out the catalyst was just me figuring out my passions, figuring out, I just have to make stuff and I'll be happy with it. So I guess that is the catalyst. It
I
turned
like
out to be
that.
right.
I like that. And we always talk about setting boundaries, setting healthy boundaries with other people. You gotta set healthy boundaries with yourself. I didn't even think about that just until like you said that. You gotta definitely set boundaries with yourself and like, okay, it's time to go on vacation. It's time to talk with my fiance, talk to my parents, whatever it is. Downtime. The rest is just as important as the work. So we've been saying it all podcasts, but it's very true.
Yeah.
And I think that answer definitely perfectly describes your current chapter of life. So I like that.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Nick, for joining me on the podcast. This was so great. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're a very busy man. Be sure check out all of Nick's professional work at www.nickproto.com. You can follow Nick at Nick Prototype on Instagram. Be sure to leave a rating for the Cervantes podcast on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the Cervantes podcast YouTube channel and click the notification bell up top so you never miss a new episode. Thanks for listening. Bye, guys.